Help us better understand the president's move for a national emergency is former Congressman Ernest Istook. He's now professor of history and political science at Utah Valley University. Ernest, thanks for being with us today.
You bet, Brian.
So does the president have authority to declare a national emergency at our southern border?
He does not have authority based upon the Constitution. However, Congress for decades has been granting extra authority to the president in different ways. You know, I spent 14 years as a member of the House Appropriations Committee dealing with what can government do or not do with the taxpayers' money. And in this case, Congress passed a law in 1976, the National Emergencies Act, that allows the president to declare emergencies and then use tie-in with other laws passed by Congress to shift around billions of dollars. And that's what President Trump is doing. He's
so
not
the short
freelancing.
Answer here
He's using
yes and no.
Not under the Constitution, but Congress gave him this power, you see. So if they don't like the way he's using it, and I expect the Supreme Court ultimately will say this, it's a political issue. Congress chose to give the president power, and the correction is for Congress to pass a measure saying we disapprove this, which the president can then veto and takes 2/3. But I don't think the Supreme Court ultimately is going to want to touch this. Some federal judges will want to substitute their judgment. I know what's proper. I know what an emergency is. But the Supreme Court, I think, is going to call this a political question that's a fight between Congress and the president. And since Congress gave the president this authority decades ago, it's up to them to fix it if they want to change it.
So you're thinking the president obviously has the... We'll say it's a loophole, obviously, with the system. As you mentioned, they gave him authority to be able to make this declaration. He shifts the money around, as Emily just mentioned. But then this plays out with a fight going into the Supreme Court that Congress ultimately has to go back to them, and they have to decide on this.
I think you've done it right. Now, I would not call it a loophole. I would call it a bypass mechanism. There's all sorts of provisions that are put in spending bills that allow the executive branch to shift money around. They call it transfer authority. And this is akin to that. So I think the Supreme Court is going to say, Congress, all you have to do is vote to disapprove this, which the president would veto, and then it takes 2/3. And with Mitch McConnell on his side, this is the key here, okay? And I think this is part of the deal for the president to sign the legislation that Mitch McConnell agreed he would support this emergency declaration. And therefore, it's extremely unlikely that would get a 2/3 vote in the U.S. Senate to override what the president is doing. So it'll take months to play out. But using both my lawyer hat and my crystal ball here, I think that ultimately the Supreme Court is going to say, Congress, you gave him this authority. If you don't like the way he uses it, you change it.
There you go. So
and
we've
not
already
ask the courts to fix it.
The House Speaker's already mentioned the disapproval you mentioned, and of course, Mitch McConnell has mentioned he does support the president. If you want to follow the work they're doing at Utah Valley University and see what Ernest is doing there with history and political science, we have a link to the UVU website at abc4.com/GMU. Talking with former Congressman Ernest Istook this morning. Thanks for being with us today.
You bet. Thanks, Brian.
You bet. Emily.